A pale morning stretched across the valley like breath on glass. Dust floated in the light as the auction yard stirred awake. Boots scuffing, ropes tightening, the smell of hay and sweat and hopeless bargains. Men spoke in quick, hard voices, trading lives by the pound. Among the rows of weary horses stood one that didn't seem to belong, a gray Mustang with a coat the color of storm ash and eyes like burnt amber. He didn't flinch when men shouted. He didn't beg to be seen. He simply stood there, the chain at his neck humming softly in the wind. They called him wild, stubborn, a waste of feed. Someone scribbled a wrong number on his tag, and in that simple mistake, fate changed hands. They said the horse was headed to the wrong farm. Miles away, Elijah Brandt's land slept in silence. The fences leaned, the grass had turned brittle from drought, and a single lantern burned in his window like a heart refusing to quit. Elijah was a man hollowed by time. His hands cracked, his back bent, his eyes slow and kind in that way of men who've learned to live alone. He hadn't meant to buy another animal. He'd asked the trader for a plow mule, something quiet and obedient to help him till what little soil still listened to rain. But when the wagon arrived, it carried not a mule, but the gray Mustang. The driver checked his list once, shrugged, and left. Elijah stood by the gate as the wagon rolled off, the wind rattling the tin roof behind him. "You ain't what I asked for," he muttered, studying the animal's wary stance. The horse's ears flicked, muscles tense beneath his thin hide. He looked both proud and scared, like something that had forgotten how to choose between fight and surrender. Elijah sighed. "Well, I suppose that makes two of us." Days passed in the slow rhythm of chores. The ranch was quiet, too quiet. Sometimes even the crows forgot to circle. Elijah set out hay each morning, but the Mustang, who he began to call Ashen, kept distance. He'd take food when Elijah wasn't looking, drink water when the man turned his back. The air between them was filled with small silences, the kind that held memory instead of peace. At night, Elijah would sit by the stable door, reading old newspapers just to hear his own voice again. Sometimes he talked to the horse through the wooden bars. "They said you were no good," he whispered one evening, words barely brushing the air. "Guess they said the same about me, once." By the second week, the town started whispering too. Men at the feed store joked about Brandt's wild ghost. Some swore they'd seen the horse standing alone at midnight, head high as if listening to something only he could hear. Clara May Hollister, who lived a few ridges over, stopped by one afternoon with a loaf of bread and that cautious kindness widows carry. She leaned against the fence, watching Ashen with soft eyes. "He's got the same look you do," she said gently. "Like he's lost something he ain't gonna find." Elijah smiled, though it barely reached his face. Maybe he just don't trust anyone enough to look. They stood there a while, listening to the creak of the barn door, the far-off hum of wind in dry grass. She didn't ask to stay for supper, and he didn't ask her to. But something wordless passed between them, the kind of understanding only two lonely souls can share. The weeks turned colder. Frost edged the window panes, and each morning, the fields seemed to forget their color. Ashen still kept his distance, but there were changes too quiet for anyone else to notice. The horse no longer turned away when Elijah came near. He'd lift his head, ears forward, eyes steady. One night, Elijah rested his palm on the stall door, and for the first time, the Mustang didn't flinch. Elijah remembered another horse, a chestnut mare from years ago. She'd carried him through 2 seasons of drought before he sold her to pay a debt he never truly owed. That decision had stayed with him, sitting heavy as stone. Looking at Ashen now, he felt that same ache, regret mixed with recognition. "You ain't wild," he said softly. "You're just done being hurt." Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the smell of rain, the kind that promised change. That night, the clouds rolled in black and heavy, lightning crawling across the sky like cracks in a mirror. The storm broke hard, rain slamming against the roof, thunder shaking the rafters. Somewhere between the flashes, Elijah heard the sharp snap of wood. The old fence had given way to be by the time he reached the yard. Ashen was gone that he ran without thought, boots sinking in the mud, lanterns swinging wild. The rain blurred everything, horizon, sky, his own breath. He called the horse's name, though it was more prayer than sound. Then, through the sheet of rain, he saw him, the gray shape standing by the creek, trembling but still. The water ran high, swollen with the storm. Elijah didn't rush closer. He just stood a few yards away, chest heaving, soaked to the bone. "It's all right, boy," he said, voice low as the thunder. "Ain't no one gonna break you here." Ashen turned, eyes catching the lantern glow. For a moment, the world held still, the rain softening, the air full of breath and memory. Slowly, the horse stepped toward him. One step, then another, until Elijah reached out, hand open, and the Mustang lowered his head, letting the man's fingers brush his soaked mane. Under that storm, something unspoken passed between them. The simple truth of two souls who had run far enough from everything else. "Maybe we both just needed the wrong road," Elijah whispered, "to find the right place." The storm left the earth soft and clean. Morning light drifted through the mist like forgiveness, laying a pale gold over the wet fields. The fence was broken, the tools scattered, but something quiet had changed. The air no longer felt hollow. Ashen stood near the barn, head lowered, steam curling from his nostrils in the cool dawn. When Elijah stepped outside, the horse didn't turn away. He waited. That day began the slow mending of things. Elijah patched the fence, plank by plank, and Ashen followed, always close enough to see, never far enough to forget. There were no sudden miracles, only small moments that stitched the distance closed. The sound of hooves following his footsteps, the nudge of a muzzle against his shoulder. The way the horse no longer flinched when he spoke to be why the time spring spread green across the valley. The ranch had begun to breathe again. Clara came by often, bringing seed or coffee or just conversation. She watched Elijah and the Mustang move together in rhythm, quiet, patient, like a song only they could hear. Once, while helping mend the corral gate, she smiled faintly. "You know," she said, brushing a strand of hair from her face, "folks in town are saying that horse listens to you like he's found his home." Elijah chuckled under his breath. "Ain't sure which of us needed a home more." The days warmed, and word reached the ranch about the spring roundup, the one event that pulled the whole county together. Men would bring their horses to test them, race them, show them off. Elijah hadn't gone in years, but that talk stirred something in him, not pride, but a quiet desire to prove that what was once rejected could stand tall again. Sheriff Dugan stopped by one afternoon, leaning on the fence with his usual drawl. "Word is you're riding that gray devil around," he said. "Town's got bets he'll throw you flat if you try him in the ring." Elijah smiled, brushing dust from his gloves. "Town's bet on worse things before." Clara looked uneasy when she heard his plan. "You don't owe them a thing, Elijah. You already proved it, to yourself, to him." He nodded, but his gaze drifted toward the corral where Ashen stood, mane lifted by the wind. "Maybe, but sometimes the world needs to see what grace looks like when it stops running." The morning of the roundup arrived under a wide, blue sky. The fields were alive with noise, laughter, shouts, the metallic clang of gates. Dust shimmered in sunlight, swirling around boots and hooves. Every man there brought his best, tall stallions, painted mares, horses bred for show. When Elijah rode in on Ashen, the crowd went still. "That's Brant's reject," someone whispered. "He's lost his mind," another muttered. Ashen pawed the dirt, ears twitching, eyes sharp with awareness. Elijah didn't hold reins tight. He didn't bark commands. He just spoke low, his voice steady, like wind through grass. The Mustang began to move. One circle, then another, slow, measured, proud. No tricks, no whip, no fear. The rhythm between them was something older than training. Trust, simple and pure. The laughter faded. One by one, heads turned. You could hear nothing but the thud of hooves and the whisper of dust. The sheriff's jaw went slack. "Well, I'll be damned," he murmured. He listens to him. Then came the test, the course meant to show control and grace. Elijah guided Ashen through it not with pull, but with presence. The horse obeyed like he'd known the man his whole life. When they stopped, breath and silence filled the space like a held prayer. And then, applause. Scattered at first, then rising like thunder after the storm. Elijah tipped his hat. But before he could move on, a sudden shout tore through the air. One of the young riders had lost his grip. His horse spooked, bolting across the corral straight toward the crowd. Panic rippled. Elijah wheeled Ashen around, shouting once. The Mustang lunged forward, intercepting the runaway horse. The two animals collided, dust exploding, ropes snapping. Elijah fell hard, the world spinning into light and sound. When the dust cleared, the scene was still. Elijah lay on the ground, blood seeping from a cut on his temple. Ashen stood over him, chest heaving, one leg scraped raw. But the horse didn't move away. He lowered his head and pressed his muzzle against Elijah's arm, trembling but unmoving, as if holding the world together with that single touch. The crowd was silent. Even the sheriff's hat fell from his hand. Clara rushed forward, kneeling beside them. Her voice shook. "He saved you," she whispered. Elijah stirred, eyes opening slowly, meeting the gray horse's gaze. His voice came soft, a rasp in the dust. "Guess he didn't come to the wrong farm after all." The sheriff cleared his throat. "That horse of yours, Brant. He's something else." Elijah smiled faintly. "No, he just needed someone to stop telling him what he ain't." By evening, the crowd had gone, leaving the field quiet again. Clara helped Elijah home, her hand steady beneath his arm. Ashen followed behind, limping but proud, each step measured, loyal. The sun sank low, spilling gold across the hills, painting the ranch in warmth it hadn't seen in years. Later, as twilight deepened, Clara wrapped Elijah's bandaged hand. The smell of coffee drifted from the stove, soft music from her old wind chime outside. Ashen grazed near the fence, calm as the evening itself. "Seems he finally found peace," Clara said, her voice half smile, half sigh. Elijah looked toward the field, eyes soft. "Peace don't come to those who never lost it. It finds the ones who kept waiting." The wind swept through the dry grass, carrying the scent of rain somewhere far away. Church bells from town drifted faintly over the valley, distant and forgiving. Clara stood beside him at the door. "You know," she said, "maybe that mistake, the wrong tag, the wrong farm, wasn't wrong at all." Elijah's lips curved in a tired, gentle smile. "Maybe nothing is, once you've lived it long enough." He watched the horse raise his head toward the horizon, mane glowing like silver flame in the last light. "Maybe we all just need to end up in the wrong place," he whispered, "so we can finally learn what right feels like." And the story closes like a memory, the light fading, the world turning soft. Sometimes, the old narrator says, life sends you where you were never meant to go, the wrong road, the wrong love, the wrong home, only to show you what grace looks like when it stays. The wild ones don't break. They heal, quietly, completely, forever.